So we already tackled the demon Primarchs, those corrupted chaos lads juiced up on dark god energy and bad decisions. And now it's only fair we discuss the ones who stayed loyal to the Emperor and didn't get addicted to sniffing warp crack. Today we're talking Loyalist Primarchs, specifically the ones who are actually walking around the galaxy right now. That means this discussion is focused on three guys: Roboute Guilliman, everyone's favorite bureaucratic blueberry, the Lion, who looks like he just woke up from a 1,000-year nap and a bar fight, and Corvus Corax, the edgy emo bird boy currently haunting the Eye of Terror like it's an angst Tumblr blog. In this video, similar to my Demon Primarch ranking, we will be ranking them from weakest to strongest based on current lore, real sources, and actual feats. This is the power pyramid, baby, and we're gonna figure out exactly where each of these Loyalist legends stands. Now these three aren't exactly the same Primarchs who disappeared after the Horus heresy. Each of them has come back with a new trick up their armored sleeves. Roboute Guilliman now uses the Emperor's Sword, a weapon literally forged by Big E, which destroys demons with a single swing. The Lion returns wielding the Emperor's Shield, which makes him almost untouchable, plus a new Forest Walk ability that lets him fade into the shadows and strike like a ghostly predator. Meanwhile, Corvus Corax has taken a darker path after having spent a millennium in the Eye of Terror. He has shed his mortal form and it seems has manifested a warp-infused form that blends his signature stealth with unpredictable raw warp power, turning him into something far more dangerous and mysterious than before. Now originally heard, I was gonna include the four missing Loyalist Primarchs: Jakatai Khan, Leman Russ, Vulcan, and Rogel Dorn, if you believe the Imperial Fist shrine building cope, which I do, cause you know, I love Rogel Dorn. But that was the original plan. I hit 20 pages on the script and I realized I was still deep in the weeds theorizing about guys who haven't even shown up in 40K yet. So yeah, the Lost Primarchs will be getting their own video, in which we'll dive into what made each of those four terrifying during the Horus Heresy, what their greatest feats were, how they stacked up to their brother Primarchs, and what kind of chaos they might unleash if and when they return. Lots of theory crafting, lots of memes, and probably more ADHD lore spirals. You already know how it goes, guys.
It's free real estate.
But for this video, we're sticking to the Loyalist lads who are actually kicking around in the 42nd millennium: Guilliman, the Lion, and Corax. So how's this going to work? Well, we're going to start by looking at each of these Primarchs' original forms, their baseline forms during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. That means we'll cover what they were capable of back then, their biggest feats, and how they stacked up to their brothers during 30K. Then we'll shift gears and dive into their current 40K forms, analyzing how much stronger, or in some cases weaker, they've become since their return. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about nostalgia or heresy era feats, it's about how these Primarchs are performing right now in the 42nd millennium. We'll look at their lore, their feats, and their weapons, and finally we'll stack them up side by side and compare them to finally figure out who really is the strongest Loyalist Primarch right now. Further down the road, I plan on doing a video ranking all the remaining Primarchs together: Loyalist, Traitor, Demon Possessed, or whatever weird category Alfarius counts as. So buckle up, it's time for a whole lot of power scaling, falling cow style. Let's do this. Starting things off, we have Roboute Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, the guy behind the Codex Astartes, empire building, and making bureaucracy look badass. During the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy, he was known as the most efficient and dependable of the Primarchs. His downfall came at the Battle of Thessalia, where Fulgrim, now a demon Primarch, gravely wounded him, leaving Guilliman in a state somewhere between dead and, medically speaking, not great. Fast forward 10,000 years, and the Imperium is falling apart. Chaos is rising, the political climate is a dumpster fire, and the Emperor is basically locked to a giant golden toilet.
That's rough, buddy.
Enter Belisarius Cawl, with some mad scientists, advanced mechanics, and a little psychic help from Saint Celestine and the Inari. Guilliman would wake up and find that he has a lot to fix. He finds the Imperium overtaken with superstition, terrible methods of file organization, and the literal worship of his corpse dad. Since returning, he's launched the Indominus Crusade, reorganized the whole Imperium, and faced off against major threats like Mortarion and Magnus the Red. In all but name, he's essentially become the Imperium's emperor. Now that we've got the stage set, who Guilliman is, what he built, how he fell, and how he clawed his way back to relevance, it's time to rewind the clock. Let's take a look at base Guilliman, the Ultramarine Primarch, in his Great Crusade and Horus Heresy era form. This is where we're going to establish the baseline. What was he like before flaming swords, Primaris politics, and waking up to a galaxy on fire? What were his strengths, his biggest feats, and how did he stack up next to his brother Primarchs back when all 18 of them were still kicking around? Because if we're going to properly power scale the 40k version of Guilliman, we first need to understand what kind of foundation we're working with. So let's break down pre-stasis Guilliman, or base Guilliman as I like to put it, and all his codex writing and empire building glory. Before breaking down his feats, let's talk about where I ranked him in the past. In my Primarch ranking video, which you can find here, I put him near the back of the pack, number 15 overall, only ahead of Lorgar, which is obvious, Ferrus Manus, and Alfarius. Now, I will say after more research and lurking throughout the community, I might have been a little too disrespectful to the Headless Wonder, and if I could rescale it, and honestly, you know what? I'm just gonna rescale the back end of the Primarch rankings right now. Yes, that means we're going down an ADHD rant. Deal with it. I originally thought Ferrus Manus was kind of a trash combatant, but after randomly rereading Fulgrim, as an autistic cow tends to do in their free time, I realized Ferrus actually fought Fulgrim evenly and even had the upper hand at one point. During their duel, Ferrus tanks several blows that would have flattened someone lesser, taking Forgebreaker literally to the dome, which only leaves a small wound in his temple. So yeah, Ferrus definitely has a better showing than I gave him credit for. Fulgrim is still definitely stronger, but you have to remember, in this specific fight, Fulgrim is incredibly conflicted throughout their duel. The demon wedged in his ass had other plans though, and once Ferrus started gaining the upper hand, it dumped a fat dose of chaos juice into Fulgrim's bloodstream. That pushed him over the edge and let him overpower and kill his former brother, turning Ferrus into the Primarch we all know and love, the Headless Wonder. Sorry, I had to indulge a little autistic cow moment there. Anyway, Ferrus is way stronger than I initially thought. You're welcome, all 6 Iron Hand fans watching. With that said, I think Guilliman slides back a little. So the new order from weakest to still kinda mid would be Lorgar, Alfarius, and then Guilliman, which I feel is fair. And since I already went down this Ferrus rabbit hole, let me rank him while I'm here. Ferrus Manus is definitely stronger than Perturabo. Perturabo is decent in a scrap, but his talents lie in strategy, not single combat. So that bumps Ferrus past 15. I think he is somewhere around the number 13 or 14th strongest Primarch, depending on how you scale him next to Mortarion. I would need to break down all of his feats into more detail to be sure, but that is not what we're here for, guys. Come on. So back to Guilliman. Let's break down why I moved him down and go over the feats he actually showed off during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. Guilliman, the so-called Avenging Son, lands at number 16 on my Horus Heresy era Primarch rankings, now just ahead of Lorgar and Alfarius and Omegon. And honestly, it's not even that controversial of a take. His actual combat record reads more like a tragic comedy than a highlight reel. Let's start with his first Primarch fight on Nucera during the Shadow Crusade, where he faces Lorgar briefly for a time. Now, this wasn't pre-heresy bookworm Lorgar, this was newly awakened psychic Lorgar, juiced up on warp powers and ready to throw hands. Guilliman holds his own, but then Angron shows up, and the second that happens, it's game over for the Blueberry. Guilliman is clearly overmatched and only survives because Angron is too busy ascending to demonhood to finish the job. If Angron had stayed in his base form for 2 more minutes, Guilliman would have been dead. Then there's his encounter with Conrad Kurz on Macrack, where he and the Lion team up to take down the Night Haunter. Even with the Lion's aid, Guilliman still gets wounded by Kurz, which makes you really wonder what would have happened if it was just a 1v1. Spoiler, I don't think it ends well for the Blueberry. And then comes the big one, Guilliman's final fight in 30K, his duel with Demon Prince Fulgrim, if you could even call it a duel. Fulgrim absolutely oozing with Slaaneish's energy, oozing, say it with me guys, oozing.
Weird, buddy, you're weird.
Wipes the floor with Guilliman. It's not even close. Fulgrim is literally so juiced up, he spanks Guilliman 10,000 years into stasis. Absolutely brutal, fellas. And just cause I want to twist the knife a little further in, we have to bring up Corfarion. Yes, Corfarion of the Word Bearers. During the Battle of Calth, Guilliman would fight this stinky little geezer, who in my opinion is a cunt like Erebus, but is also just as powerful as the first chaplain. He is technically a mortal man, but insanely enhanced by the warp, and Guilliman in their fight gets absolutely folded like a pancake. He's literally seconds from death before Corfarion makes the classic villain mistake and starts the monologue. To be fair, Guilliman's not the first Primarch to get rocked by a Psyker. We've seen others like Rogel Dorn struggle with warp-enhanced enemies, but at least they manage to push through and win. Guilliman just gets lucky, as Guilliman is able to reach through Corfarion's chest and pull out one of his hearts while Corfarion is stupidly monologuing. One of Roboute Guilliman's few victories is against Alfarius on Eskandor during the Scouring, but this was reported in a random campaign book from the early 2000s, and we haven't heard anything about it since. Furthermore, we all know how the Alpha Legion works. His death was never confirmed, so in my opinion, this was definitely not Alfarius, or I guess Omegon, so I'm not going to be really counting this duel as a significant feat for Guilliman. Now, if all that said, Guilliman is not without his upsides. The dude is tough as hell. And no fear, as the Battle of Calth rages, he gets blown out of his flagship, the Macrack's Honor, without a frickin' helmet, becomes fully exposed to space, and proceeds to survive for an extended period of time while fighting off enemy space marines on the hull of the ship. He even punches a word bearer's head clean off while in the vacuum of space.
Oh my god! Wow!
He's also tanked shots that would have vaporized lesser Astartes, including getting gunned down by Alpha Legion assassins in a surprise ambush. So even if Guilliman doesn't win his fights, he sure as hell survives them. Bottom line, 30K Guilliman is not one of the top tier Primarchs in terms of raw combat. He's a genius, an empire builder, and the galaxy's most stubborn bureaucrat. But when it comes to throwing hands, he's near the back of the Primarch pack, and that's where he went down. In a coma, one of the weakest amongst his brothers. But that's not where his story ends, folks, because now we're going to take a look at what he's become in the 42nd millennium. What changed when he came back? Did the armor, the sword, and the Emperor's Light actually make him stronger? Or is he still the same nerd with slightly fancier toys? Guilliman awoke after Cadia had fallen and Macrack was under siege by the forces of the Black Legion. As his bedroom was full of heretics and screaming berserkers, he awoke and immediately began to lay down the law. The Ultra Law.
What?
Sorry, that was a bad joke, and I apologize. Guilliman was revived by a combination of Mechanicum science, Eldar soul magic, and sheer narrative necessity. But more specifically, the resurrection was orchestrated by Balsarius Cawl, who had been preparing for this moment for thousands of years under Guilliman's own orders. With assistance from the Inari, specifically Yfrane, High Priestess of the newly awakened Elder God of the Dead, Yanid, and with the presence of Saint Celestine anchoring the miracle, Guilliman was pulled from stasis and healed of his mortal wounds. However, even though he was back, Guilliman wasn't fully healed. Fulgrim's venomous blade hadn't just wounded him, it had poisoned him on a molecular level. For a time, the damage was so severe that even after his miraculous resurrection, Guilliman existed in a fragile state of life and death. The Armor of Fate, crafted by Balsarius Cawl, was a suit of armor packed with life support systems, and it regulated the residual damage from Fulgrim's strike, constantly working to keep Guilliman alive. But that was then. As of the current timeline, it's been confirmed in the lore that Guilliman has fully recovered from his injuries. The worst of Fulgrim's corruption has been purged, whether by the passage of time, the Emperor's light, or sheer Guilliman willpower, we don't fully know. What we do know is that the Avenging Sun no longer needs the armor of fate to survive. He still wears it, of course, because why wouldn't you wear a nigh indestructible suit of armor crafted by the Mechanicum? But now it's more of a tool of war, not a crutch for survival. This nicely brings us to Guilliman's current loadout. Let's dive into his weapons, his armor, the upgrades, and then finally touch on what Guilliman has achieved feats-wise in the current setting. Obviously, we should start with the Armor of Fate. Let's discuss its powers outside of its healing of Guilliman right after his resurrection. The Armor of Fate is a purpose-built, 10,000 year in the making suit of Artificer power armor designed by Belsarius Call to keep Guilliman alive after Fulgrim's venomous blade fractured his flesh and spirit. Featuring life support systems, regenerative tech, an iron halo, and eldritch safeguards fueled by Euphrane's You Need Soul magic, it protected Guilliman from even the most heinous blows. We see it capable of blocking bolter fire, warp fire even from Magnus the Red, and nuclear blasts. What the hell? Is this the fridge from Indiana Jones? Whether as a healing device or a battlefield juggernaut, the Armor of Fate is a key part of why Guilliman can still stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's worst threats. But that's not the only weapon Guilliman has gained. In addition to the Armor of Fate, Guilliman still has the Hand of Dominion, and now, the Sword of the Emperor. Let's continue with the Hand of Dominion. The Hand of Dominion is Guilliman's signature power fist and one of the most devastating melee weapons in the Imperium, combining brutal close combat force with integrated firepower. This master-crafted gauntlet can effortlessly punch through tank hulls, one-shot armored vehicles, and even tear apart war machines with raw strength, as seen in both Codex lore and multiple novels. In melee, it's capable of sending Magnus the Red flying, breaking Lorgar's ribs and organs, and decapitating Chaos Space Marines even through their Terminator armor. It has smashed a 20-foot demon's head clean off, shattered a corrupted acid sword, and finished off towering demons in brutal fashion. Even ranged, the bolter is powerful enough to knock back Scarbrand, a greater demon over twice Guilliman's height. The hand also features advanced battlefield tech, including a built-in scanner and targeting system in the helmet that allows Guilliman to track enemies in real time. But the Hand of Dominion pales in comparison to the Emperor's Sword. The Emperor's Sword is Guilliman's primary melee weapon and a relic of unimaginable power, literally forged and used by the Emperor of Mankind himself. Unlike most relic blades, this sword erases, purges, and permanently unravels whenever it strikes. It's shown to be capable of cleaving through Khorne berserkers and punching through Terminator armor, which usually shrugs off molten metal and multiple plasma bolts. It's even more powerful against Chaos-aligned foes, as it neutralizes regenerative abilities and prevents demons from returning to the warp after death, something almost no other weapon in the Imperium can do. In other words, if Guilliman slays a demon with this sword, it stays dead, permanently. The sword is also resistant to warp-based attacks, shown when it deflects Mortarion's psychic powers during Godblight, and its sheer presence in combat radiates divine authority. But most impressively, when Guilliman becomes empowered by the Emperor, the sword becomes a weapon of cosmic consequence. In the warp realm of Nurgle itself, Guilliman drives the Emperor's sword into the diseased Earth, wounding the Chaos God so severely that the demons present believed it caused permanent damage to Nurgle's garden. When he returns to real space, the sword's empowered strike still carries aftershocks of that reality-breaking blow, burning away Nurgle's corruption and scarring the landscape of Lax. We'll go into more detail about that mind-blowing feat in just a bit when we cover Guilliman's high-end showing. But make no mistake, the Emperor's Sword is one of the most powerful melee weapons in Warhammer 40K. So now that we've covered Guilliman's gear, the Divine Sword, the brutal Power Fist, and the high-tech armor keeping him alive and dangerous, it's time to ask the real question. How does Guilliman actually perform in the 42nd millennium? What are his most impressive feats since returning? Has all that fancy equipment and divine glow-up turned him into a powerhouse, or is he still the same bureaucratic brawler? Let's break down his biggest moments in the current era and see just how far the Avenging Sun has come. Remember, we're only looking at significant duels. so we won't be looking at Guilliman killing Chaos Marines and lesser demons. There are 5 fights I want to take a specific look at that Guilliman has in 40k. First is against Kairos Fateweaver, a greater demon of Tzeentch, who Guilliman encounters as he travels towards the throne world. Funnily enough, this first fight isn't really a straight up duel as many would expect, but I thought I should cover it regardless. As Guilliman travels to Terra, Kairos Fateweaver implants negative emotions in Guilliman's mind, and when the pair finally fight, Kairos uses a spell to drag out all these negative emotions, which paralyzes him, allowing Guilliman to be captured. Like I said, it's not a straight up fight, but what we can gather from this is that Guilliman is not very durable against magic. But Fateweaver did spend quite some time creating this spell, so I won't hold it too much against the Blueberry. I don't think a lot of Primarchs would be able to hold out against this spell. Not too long after, Guilliman's next significant fight is against Skarbrand, the greater demon of Khorne. While battling against Khorne's rage in his mind, an effect that Skarbrand has on everyone around him, Guilliman faces down against the fallen champion of Khorne and holds his own against the greater demon in a melee fight. At a decisive moment, using the Hand of Dominion, he blasts Skarbrand to pieces, so Guilliman at least scales above greater demons like Skarbrand. Once Guilliman arrives on Luna, he faces yet another threat. Motherfucking Magnus the Red, Demon Primarch Magnus, who has emerged from the Luna Webway Gate with thousands of his warriors to stop Guilliman from reaching the Emperor. Now this fight is Guilliman's second fight against his corrupted brothers. Let me start by kinda laying out Magnus's powers. We see him manipulating reality, matter, using telepathy and telekinesis to crush dreadnoughts and terminators with a flick of his wrists like he's swatting flies. He casually threw a fleet of battle barges at each other, and oh yeah, he atomized a Titan with a thought. So yeah, Magnus the Red is frickin' broken. In my Demon Primarch scaling video, I said Magnus the Red was the strongest, and he is without a doubt. But as I elaborated on in that video, the writers don't know how to write him.
Yeah, you suck. Yeah, you just fucking suck. Blows my mind that somebody like this not only exists, but also is delusional enough to post it online.
In this specific duel, Magnus is definitely beating Guilliman, but to put it politely, Roboute Guilliman should lose almost instantly to the Crimson King. For example, when Magnus and Vulcan fight in the Webway during the Siege of Terra, Magnus is able to simply alter Vulcan's fucking body so he can't breathe, and of course, since Vulcan is a perpetual, he survives. But why doesn't Magnus do this against Guilliman? Yeah, I'm as confused as you are. Guilliman holds his own until the Sisters of Silence arrive, nullifying Magnus's powers and allowing Guilliman to toss Magnus back through the closing Webway portal. This whole fight, guys, is pure bullshit to me.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Derivative.
The fourth significant fight I want to cover is actually 2 duels. I know that makes zero sense, but I'm combining them because both pit Guilliman against greater demons of Nurgle, Quarmus and Septicus 7. These fights take place during the Plague Wars, as Mortarion and the Death Guard launch their invasion of the Ultramar realm. What makes these encounters important isn't just who Guilliman fights, but what they reveal about the Emperor's sword. The blade is basically an anthem to all demonkind. In the duel with Quarmus, a greater demon who has been ripping through Loyalist forces like wet paper, Guilliman easily overpowers him and banishes him, showcasing not just his own martial skill, but how devastating the Emperor's sword is against warp entities. But it's the fight with Septicus 7 that really gets interesting. Guilliman impales a demon with the Emperor's sword, and instead of just dipping back to the warp like usual, Septicus is permanently destroyed, as in gone forever. That's a level of kill power that's almost unheard of when dealing with demons, especially greater demons who usually just reform in the warp after death. These 2 fights cement the Emperor's sword as one of the most terrifying weapons in the hands of any loyalist, especially against demons. Finally, we come to Guilliman's 5th major fight in the 42nd millennium, his showdown with Mortarion, Primarch of the Death Guard. And let me tell you, it's not very pretty, guys. Oh boy, it's not. Mortarion absolutely bodies the Lord Commander like he's in the WWE and the plot's written against him. That's like the worst metaphor I've ever used in my life. I'm not gonna use ever again. I don't know why I use that one, guys. Bad bull. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it here. he absolutely destroys Guilliman. During the fight, Mortarion injects him with a warp-infused disease called the Godblight, a supernatural virus so deadly it can kill a Primarch and erase their essence from the warp itself. Yep guys, you heard it, it nukes your soul completely. But here's where things get even more spicy. As Guilliman is literally dying like a fish out of water, the Emperor, yes, the Emperor who's dead on the Golden Throne, or I guess not really dead on the Golden Throne, whatever, however you look at it, pulls a classic Deus Ex Machina moves and intervenes directly. This is due to the Great Rift flooding reality with warp energy, and the Emperor is able to manifest a fragment of his consciousness in the mortal realm, specifically in Guilliman. Where in Guilliman? In his ass. I kind of voice cracked right there. I'm totally going off script for the last 2 minutes. What's going on, guys? What does he do with this divine intervention, though? He uses Guilliman as a vessel, not fully possessing him, but temporarily empowering him with his own might to both heal him from the Godblight and repel Mortarion with sheer psychic fury. And here's where we need to kind of break things up. So far, we've covered Lord Commander Guilliman, the standard stasis revived version running around with the Hand of Dominion and the Emperor's Sword. But now, we're drawing a line between him and the Emperor Empowered Guilliman, a version of Roboute Guilliman temporarily acting as the Emperor's vessel, juiced up with divine psychic might and fully channeling a fragment of the Emperor's consciousness. And let me tell you guys, this version is kinda stupidly overpowered. And when I mean stupidly, I mean it's silly. I tried to think of a metaphor there, but I couldn't. God damn it. Perfect moment, ruined it. Moving on. In this form, Guilliman not only drives back Mortarion, he uses the Emperor's Sword to literally tear a hole in Nurgle's garden, damaging the realm of a Chaos God and hurting Nurgle himself. What the fuck? That's insane. Like, that's nearly unprecedented in the lore, guys. I don't think anyone else in 40k has directly injured a Chaos God's realm, let alone a Chaos God himself. Maybe Cain did it 10,000 years ago when the Eldar kinda did too many drugs, but I don't think so. But the thing about that is, and I want to be very clear about this, we're not going to include Emperor Empowered Guilliman in this ranking. Why? Because at that point, he's not really Guilliman anymore, he's a meat mech for Big E. It would be unfair to compare that god tier, one-time only version to his brother Primarchs on this list. Don't kill me, Herd, but I feel like that's the right call. I think I'm going to do a video on Emperor Empowered Guilliman at some time in the future, but as of right now, we're going to exclude him. My apologies. So to recap, we've looked at Lord Commander Guilliman and his most significant 40k feats, from getting folded like a chair by Kairos and Mortarion, to overpowering greater demons like Skarbrand and Septicus with the Emperor's Sword. We've also looked at his resilience, his endurance, and his high tier equipment. Once again, at the end of the video, after introducing each of the 3 Loyalist Primarchs, I will once again break down their feats and compare each of them to finally lay out an evidence-backed ranking. But now that we've wrapped up the Avenging Sun, it's time to shift gears and look at someone very different. Next up, Lionel Johnson. Let's see what the first son has been up to, and whether or not he's the top dog in the 42nd millennium. Lionel Johnson, the first, the Lord of the Dark Angels, and arguably one of the most secretive Primarchs in Warhammer 40k. Known for his unmatched swordsmanship and a deep distrust of, well, basically everyone, the Lion was always a shadowy figure even amongst his brothers. Raised on the death world of Caliban, he grew up alone in its haunted forest, becoming a survivalist and a warrior long before the Emperor found him. During the Great Crusade, he led the First Legion with ruthless efficiency, wiping out Xenos empires like the Rang Dang and maintaining a rigid code of knightly discipline. The Lion's story took a dramatic turn during the final days of the Horus heresy, after the destruction of Caliban and his apocalyptic duel with his foster father, Luther. A battle so catastrophic it shattered their legion, Lionel Johnson vanished. Many believed him dead. In truth though, he was entombed within the rock, the floating fortress monastery of the Dark Angels, hidden away by the Watchers in the Dark and left in a stasis-like slumber. You know, like Sleeping Beauty. and then nothing. For 10,000 years, until now. In the current setting, in the wake of the Great Rift, the galaxy has been split in two, and literally everything is falling apart. The Lion has finally returned though. Awakened from his slumber, older, wearier, but just as deadly, Lionel Johnson re-emerged during the book Son of the Forest. Unlike Guilliman, who is a master of politics and strategy, the Lion works in the shadows. He's become a monster hunting legend across Imperium Nihilus, a blade in the dark defending the Emperor's people and slaying corrupted beasts. He's back, but not as a shining knight, more like a vengeful warden. But before we get to that version of the Lion, the modern version of him, we've got to establish the baseline just like Guilliman. Now we're going to dive into Great Crusade and Horus Heresy Lionel Johnson. What was he capable of at his peak in 30k? What were his biggest feats? How did he compare to his brother Primarchs? And how good was he at throwing hands before all the new artifacts and mystic dreamwalking powers? Because just like Guilliman, in order to see if 40k Lion got buffed or nerfed, we've got to first figure out just how stacked he was before he took a long nap. So let's dive into base Lion, who he was, what he did, and what makes him one of the strongest Primarchs in 30k. Once again, I want to bring up the video where I originally ranked all the Primarchs, and in that list, I had the Lion sitting comfortably at number 3, just below Magnus and Sanguinius. And honestly, I still think that's a pretty fair spot for him. So what makes Lionel Johnson rank so high? Let's break down his most significant duels and feats from 30k, starting with his long-standing beef with Konrad Curze, the schizophrenic wonder. The Lion and Curze go at it multiple times throughout the Heresy, and while their early clashes are pretty back and forth, it all culminates in Angels of Caliban, where the Lion absolutely beats the brakes off Curze and takes him captive. Now to put that into perspective, Konrad Curze is no pushover. In fact, this is a bit of a hot take guys, but I personally rank Konrad Curze as the 4th strongest Primarch, even ahead of Angron. The guy's a monster, not just physically dangerous, but also psychically gifted with foresight, meaning he can literally see his opponent's next move before it even happens. That's a pretty broken ability if there ever was one. And yet, the Lion overwhelms him, not with tricks or traps, but with pure terrifying speed and technique. I'm not kidding guys, he literally blitzes Curze so fast that Nighthaunter's foresight fails to keep up. And I know faster than the future sounds like some anime ass nonsense.
He's so fast! He did it right! He increased his strength without losing speed!
But that's how the lore presents it. He was just too fast. And this isn't an isolated case either. During the Thramas Crusade, Lionel Johnson goes up against Chaos Fateweaver, a greater demon of Tzeentch, who we talked about earlier, who also has foresight, and again, the Lion blitzes him before he can react.
Wanna see me run to that mountain and back? You wanna see me do it again?
One of the few losses the Lion suffers is against Luther, who after his isolation on Caliban, has become a chaos-empowered monster on steroids. While not exactly like Horus, Luther was essentially the backup plan should Horus fail. Facing him, the Lion was up against a foe of immense power, and on top of that, he was emotionally conflicted, confronting his former father figure. So while the Lion did lose, it was against an incredibly formidable and personally challenging opponent. Oh no, I feel my ADHD taking over. The Lion is just a freaking monster and truly stands as one of the strongest Primarchs in 30k. And what makes that so impressive is the fact that he doesn't have any kind of supernatural crutch. He doesn't have the divine foresight of Curze, the angelic flight and psychic awareness of Sanguinius, or the sheer warp field dominance of Magnus, who's arguably the second most powerful psyker in the galaxy behind Big Daddy E himself. He's just a guy with a sword, with raw speed, insane reflexes, monstrous strength, and centuries of honed technique. And that is what makes him terrifying. He's the martial ideal, a swordsman so fast he can outrun foresight, so skilled he can outduel other Primarchs, and so relentless that even monsters like Curze and greater demons can't stop him. During the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy, the Lion is clearly one of the top dogs. But now let's shift to the current setting, where things get a little bit more complicated. Unlike Guilliman, who was held in stasis and effectively frozen in the prime of his life, the lion has, well, lived. He wasn't preserved like some museum piece. He aged, changed, and evolved over time. Wait, hold on. That belongs in a museum. Sorry, I had to say
That belongs in a museum.
Spending a millennium alone in the depths of the rock, healed and protected by Watchers in the Dark and Calibite spirits, while the aging process doesn't impact a Primarch the way it does a normal human, there is still a clear difference. Even the lion himself admits that. In his current form, if he fought Conrad Kurz again the way he did back in 30k, he might not have won. So that naturally raises the question, is 40k Lion weaker than his 30k self? Let's find out, starting with what new weapons, armor, and upgrades he's picked up since returning to the galaxy in Arc of Omens. Because while age might have crept in, the Lion didn't come back empty-handed. First up is Fealty, which is the sword the Lion now wields. A radiant power weapon recovered from the strange realm known as Mere Caliban. It's a finely balanced blade that cuts through corrupted flesh, demon hide, and reinforced armor with precision and force. It's designed for clean, efficient strikes, and it plays directly into the Lion's refined and brutal fighting style. Arma Luminis is next, which is the ranged weapon the Lion now carries. An ancient combi bolter with an integrated plasma gun. Also recovered from Mere Caliban, it combines rapid fire capability with armor melting plasma rounds, allowing the Lion to eliminate high priority targets before closing the distance. It's been shown to blast through elite enemies with ease, making it a battlefield equalizer. And finally, the most iconic piece of his current loadout is the Emperor's Shield, which once belonged to the Emperor of Mankind himself. The shield is capable of reflecting attacks back at the enemy, including warp charge strikes and even blows from demon primarchs like Angron. It's been used to counter heavy melee assaults, turn demonic power against its wielder, and most notably, to permanently destroy demons by unraveling their presence entirely. Most weapons simply banish demons back to the warp, but this shield eliminates them on the spot. Sounds kinda similar to the Emperor's Sword. Huh, way to go Games Workshop, you're really creative on this one. The Lion also comes equipped with a brand new power, Forest Walk. And honestly, I don't even know where it comes from, guys. Apparently, after his resurrection, he discovered he could step into an eerie, echoing realm called Mere Caliban, then reappear anywhere in real space. Sometimes he travels exactly where he aims to, other times he spat out exactly where he's needed, whether that's to rescue a fallen successor force, intercept a Xenos invasion, or face off against a Chaos champion. He might take a straight path, or end up going on a random side quest along the way. Lore suggests something, maybe the Emperor, maybe the Watchers are guiding him. Whether it's divine intervention or pure plot mechanics, it's wildly handy. In Son of the Force, the Lion is shown actively training with his Force Walk ability, meditating with the fallen knight, Zabriel, trying to focus and learning to reach specific destinations. At this stage, it clearly drains him and he hasn't fully mastered it yet. What's interesting though, is that it doesn't seem to function like typical warp travel. He can bypass warp storms and teleport jammers entirely, suggesting this isn't standard psychic movement, it's something older, deeper, and possibly tied to the Emperor or the Watchers in the Dark, like I suggested earlier. By the time of Arc of Omens though, we see that the Lion has developed a much stronger grasp on this power. During his fight with Angron, he's able to summon fog and trees from Mere Caliban, using them to smother Angron's warp field flames and create an oppressive battlefield that hinders the Blood God's champion. It's clear that the Lion's warp abilities have grown, not just in raw power, but in how they shape and control the environment around him in combat. In summary, the Lion has some extremely powerful weapons, with the standout being the Emperor's Shield. A relic so strong that even Angron, one of the most brutally powerful demon primarchs in existence, can't break through it. The shield is shown reflecting Angron's strikes, turning Angron's own strength against him mid-fight. That alone places the Lion's war gear firmly among the most powerful in this setting. On top of that, he possesses the Force Walk ability, a mysterious form of travel that lets him bypass warp storms, teleport jammers, and normal reality itself. While not yet a consistent combat tool, Force Walk is clearly becoming more dangerous and far more than just a teleport trick. But the most frustrating part about all of this is despite waking up during one of the most chaotic eras in Warhammer 40k history, with the galaxy split by the Great Rift, demon invasions everywhere, and the Imperium hanging on by a thread, the Lion barely has any new lore, which is ridiculous, guys, because this is one of the Emperor's most dangerous sons returning at the perfect time for some serious storytelling. You'd expect him to be front and center in major conflicts, dueling other demon primarchs, hunting down traitors, or taking the fight to Abaddon himself, but instead we hear nothing. Absolutely nothing. GW really dropped the ball on my Lion King. Still, what little we do have will show if the Lion has lost a step or two. Let's go over the few key feats we do have from his return and see how well he holds up in the current setting. Since we have only seen the Lion in the book Son of the Forest and the Ark of Omens, the one significant fight he has is with Angron, Demon Primarch of Khorne, during their duel on Wormwood. Let's dissect it and see if the Lion truly has gotten old. So the way the Lion engages in this fight could mislead you into believing the Lion was clearly overmatched and stood no chance against Demon Primarch Angron, as he fled and dodged through Wormwood, always on the defensive. This is simply not true. Lionel Johnson arrives on the battlefield of Wormwood to find Dante grievously wounded and the forces of the Imperium on the brink of defeat. As Angron descends into a storm of warp-fueled rage, the Lion appears, shield in hand, to stand between the demon and his brother's gene son. What follows is a masterclass of calculated strategy and swordcraft, an entire duel defined by cunning motion, battlefield control, and psychological warfare. Angron charges with overwhelming fury, smashing through machinery and war engines alike, but every strike is met by the Emperor's shield. Each impact forces shockwaves of golden force that staggers the Red Angel and buys the Lion critical breathing room amidst the battlefield chaos. Amid the factory fumes of Wormwood, the Lion uses his force walk ability to reshape the terrain, summoning smoke, spectral woods, and environmental hazards to mask his movement and disorientate Angron. From there, the Lion's combination of martial discipline and duelist precision shines through. Fealty is wielded with insane accuracy. When Angron lunges, the Lion ducks, parries with his shield, then pivots to drive the blade clean through the demon's throat. The weight of Angron's own momentum helps thrust Fealty into the back of his neck, skewering him with a single decisive strike. Angron crashes into the rubble, blood exploding from his wound, and the Lion finishes him off by smashing his shield down across his skull, shattering his physical form and diminishing his essence into the warp. In summary, it's an extraordinary feat. The Lion, with tactical finesse, demon-slaying war gear, and environmental manipulation, defeats Angron, the second strongest demon Primarch, through superior planning, timing, and gear. It's one of the most impressive Primarch-level duels in modern 40k lore, reinforcing why Lionel Johnson remains among the deadliest warriors in the galaxy today. Before moving on to the next section, let's take a moment to talk about the Lion's age, and whether it actually affected his performance compared to his 30k version. The Lion himself openly admits he has doubts. In Son of the Forest, he reflects on the possibility that someone like Conrad Kurz could defeat him in his current state, hinting at a fear that time may have dulled his edge. But that's from his own eternal monologue. The view from others tells a different story. From the perspective of his newly recruited Risen, the Lion hasn't missed a step. They watch him move faster than the eye can track, striking with precision and power that no ordinary warrior, even amongst the Astartes, could hope to match. His duel with Angron further reinforces that point. He's still fast enough to outmaneuver a demon Primarch, still strong enough to parry and return Angron's crushing blows, and still tactical enough to turn a chaotic battlefield into one that plays to his advantage. So yeah, maybe age has left a small mark, a crack in his confidence, or a moment of fatigue, but physically and tactically, the Lion is still a beast.
Give me everything. A call an ambulance! But not for me!
And now armed with the Emperor's shield, the Force Walk ability, and his sheer willpower still intact, I'd argue this version of the Lion is stronger than his 30k counterpart. He may be older, but he's not weaker, he's wiser, better armed, and more dangerous than ever. With that said, now on to the emo bird boy. Corvus Corax, also known as the Raven Lord, the Liberator, or the Chooser of the Slain, is a master of stealth, sabotage, and guerrilla warfare. He was the Primarch of the Raven Guard, a legion that followed in his footsteps, becoming specialized in infiltration, hit-and-run tactics, and covert operations. Unlike his physically dominant brothers, Corax relied on speed, cunning, and perfect timing, a ghost in black plate haunting the battlefield before you even knew he was there. Corax was present during the infamous Dropsite Massacre on Istavan V, where his legion was nearly annihilated, a brutal betrayal that effectively shattered the Raven Guard as a fighting force. In the wake of this tragedy, Corax and the remnants of his legion shifted to waging a shadow war across the galaxy by striking at trader supply lines and infrastructure as they advanced towards Terra. When the heresy finally ended, Corvus vanished into the Eye of Terror, leaving behind a single word as his final vow: nevermore. Which sounds pretty goddamn emo to me, guys. His mission was clear though, to hunt down and destroy his traitor brothers. For 10,000 years, his fate remained a mystery, until whispers and warped rumors began to suggest that the Raven Lord might not just be alive, but something far more terrifying. Now here's where people tend to get confused, so let me be very clear before we go any further. Corvus Corax is not a demon Primarch. He's not even a demon. None of that tinfoil hat Reddit lore is real, guys. Corax has simply embraced what all Primarchs are: warped, touched beings shaped into flesh by the Emperor. And now, deep in the Eye of Terror, he's learned to tap into that side of himself. That's it. Seriously, this rumor just won't die, guys, and the book Shadow of the Past, a major plot point, revolves around Corax being immune to the Wordbearer's anti-demon wards, because you guessed it, he's not a frickin' demon. During the Horus Heresy, we already saw him use abilities like phasing into shadows or erasing his presence completely, powers that have clearly been upgraded since then. But it's not because he turned into some demon prince of justice, as Corax says in the book himself. I'm gonna try my best impersonation of Corvus Corax. Here we go. I am what I've always been, said Corax. I am vengeance incarnate. I am justice served. This place beyond the veil has revealed what we all are. Underneath the veneer of humanity our Father crafted for us, we are of the warp. So again, for the folks in the back, Corax is not a demon. Please, please, please stop saying that, or I'm going to hit you with this steel chair. Now, I get it. Some of you may be wondering, why am I even including Corvus Corax in this ranking when technically the last time we saw him was sometime in M31 after his second showdown with Lorgar. But hear me out, there are two good reasons. First, the Eye of Terror doesn't exactly follow a 9-to-5 schedule. Time there is all kinds of broken, so while it's been 10,000 years for us, it might have only been a few years or even days for Corax. Second, and more importantly, I believe the version of Corvus Corax we've seen post-heresy is already operating at or near his peak power level. By the time he shows up in the modern setting, he's not going to need another power-up, he's already there. So with that out of the way, just like we did with Guilliman and the Lion, let's rewind the clock and look at base Corax during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. One last time, guys, let's talk about where I placed Corvus Corax in my overall Primarch rankings. And yes, this is a controversial take. My original placement had him sitting at number 11, which definitely raised some eyebrows, especially because I put him above Horus Lubrical, who I put at number 12. I get it. Horus is supposed to be one of the strongest Primarchs, the War Master, the chosen son of the Emperor, yada 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 yada. But here's the problem. Base Horus doesn't really have any feats to back up that statement. Nearly everything impressive about him we see after he gets corrupted by chaos. Now you could argue he belongs at least in the top 10, and that's fair. But for me, the number 10 spot goes to Rogel Dorn, the dude who killed Alfarius and tanked a fight with Demon Primarch Fulgrim until Fulgrim got bored and he needed to go do Ketamine. Vulcan sits at number 9 for me, thanks to his perpetual nature and the time he literally defeated Demon Primarch Magnus in the Webway, and then there's the Khan at number 8, who straight up defeated Demon Primarch Mortarion. As for number 7, I have Leman Russ, who wounded Horus post-Moloch, which is an absolutely insane feat considering Horus was juiced to the eyeballs with chaos power at that point. So yeah, saying Corax is stronger than base Horus might raise some pitchforks, but the reality is, we just can't scale Horus with any real certainty. He's a definition of narrative hype with minimal hard data. But I digress, this isn't about the bald menace, this is about the emo bird boy, Corvus Corax. So let's jump into his actual feats and see whether he really deserves to be that high on my list. Unfortunately for the bird boy, after the Dropside massacre, Corax kinda drops off the face of the earth. But before he vanishes, he does have one significant duel in 30k, and surprise surprise, it's with Lorgar Aurelian, because apparently that's the only guy Corax is allowed to fight. I feel another ADHD rant taking over. I really wish Corax had fought Omegon during the Horus Heresy. It would have been perfect. Like the Alpha Legions already involved in the Deliverance Lost subplot, just have Omegon show up for a proper Primarch on Primarch throwdown. We hardly saw Omegon at all during the Heresy, which I get is kind of the point, but come on, missed opportunity, lame Games Workshop. Anyway, during the massacre, as Corax is tearing through hordes of possessed traitors, he runs into Lorgar. The two clash, though calling it a fight would be generous, and Corax ends up disemboweling the Preacher Boy. He's inches away from finishing the job when Conrad Kurz, everyone's favorite schizophrenic, jumps in to interrupt it. Corax retreats shortly after, but I want to make something really clear. He doesn't flee because Kurz is too strong, he leaves because his sons needed him elsewhere, and their lives take priority. Outside of that one-on-one, we mostly see Corax doing what he does best, butchering traitor marines, carving up dark mechanica monstrosities, and using his mastery of shadow and stealth to slip through battlefields like a ghost. Even during the Heresy, his Wraith slipping abilities make him one of the hardest Primarchs to pin down, both literally and narratively. Once again, it's tough to precisely measure how powerful Corax is, especially since he's only got that one concrete duel, and it's against Lorgar, who, let's be real guys, is one of the weakest Primarchs during that time. Even so, Corax absolutely tears through him like butter, proving beyond a doubt that he's incredibly formidable even in a one-on-one fight. But like the other two, we're not exactly looking at 30k Corax, we're looking at his warped touch form of him. So let's set the stage. We see this form in the short book, The Shadow of the Past, where Corax massacres several word bearers before eventually having a showdown with Lorgar Aurelian, Demon Primarch of Chaos Undivided. In that book, The Shadow of the Past, we witness the terrifying reemergence of Corvus Corax. No longer the brooding, stealthy Primarch of old, but a fully warped touch incarnation of vengeance and shadows. The story ultimately builds up to his confrontation with his longtime nemesis, Lorgar. Their clash is a brutal metaphysical duel set deep within the Eye of Terror, where reality itself bends to the will of warp entities. Both shed their mortal facades and unleash the true horror of what they've become. Lorgar, despite his ascension to demonhood, is overwhelmed by Corax's sheer ferocity and warped abilities. Though some may meme that Lorgar ran away, the text makes it very clear that he already intended to exile himself, and his retreat wasn't cowardice, but premeditated. Still, Corax undeniably best Lorgar in combat, and would have likely destroyed his portal to Sicarius if not for the interference of Lorgar's Gene Sons. Corax's new powers are nothing short of terrifying. He can dissolve into a living shadow, shifting his form into a flock of talon-like birds that can rip through Astartes. He can become a towering winged being twice the size of a space marine, and at will, he can shift into an oily shadow pool capable of consuming entire squads, all while being impervious to bolter fire. These forms are horrifying in both their physical prowess and psychological torment. The fact that Corax defeats Lorgar, a full-on demon Primarch, is a staggering feat. It demonstrates not only how far Corax has embraced the warp, but how immensely powerful he's become. It's also critical to note this occurs within the Eye of Terror, where warp saturation boosts all psychic and demonic powers. Even so, Corax's new form stands out. As he declares during the fight, "I am vengeance incarnate, I am justice delivered." The veil of humanity is gone. Corax has become what he always was beneath the surface. A living embodiment of righteousness, terrifying justice, now fully unchained. While he may be diminished in real space, the monster he's become within the warp is one of the most fearsome beings the Imperium or Chaos has ever seen. So Corax went from just an emo bird boy to the emo bird boy. He truly is a monster now. It seems he hasn't acquired any new weapons or gear though, so he is solely relying on his warp abilities. As the greatest actor of our age said, "Alright, alright, alright." We've broken down each of the Loyalist Primarchs still active in the current era, from their Horus Heresy days to the modern millennium, so now it's time to rank them on the Cow Power Pyramid. To do that, we'll first summarize each Primarch's biggest feat, then stack them against each other to see who truly reigns supreme. Let's start with Roboute Guilliman. Perhaps Guilliman's greatest feat is surviving direct confrontations with some of the most terrifying entities in the galaxy. He has gone toe-to-toe with demon Primarchs like Mortarion, Magnus, and even Fulgrim, holding his own against their warp-enhanced might. He also defeated Skarbrand, an immensely powerful greater demon of Khorne, in single combat, a staggering achievement given Skarbrand's raw, apocalyptic strength. However, despite these incredible duels, Guilliman has yet to claim a definite victory over a fellow Primarch in the current era, even with the Emperor's Sword, which should be a considerable buff. But alas, Guilliman is not that guy, pal.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
The Lion is next, and his greatest feat in 30k was defeating Konrad Curze, one of the top 5 strongest Primarchs in my opinion during that time period. An opponent with immense strength, speed, savagery, and foresight. In the current setting though, the Lion takes things even further with his defeat of Angron, now a full-blown demon Primarch. This duel showcased the Lion unleashing his own, newly gained warp powers to overcome the corrupted World Eater, who I believe to be the second strongest demon Primarch overall. Side tangent, I know we're doing this late in the video, it doesn't matter, I don't care. I want to talk about Angron and his power level before Demon Ascension, because honestly guys, it's fucking crazy. And for the record, I would love to do a full video breaking down each of the Primarch's power levels someday, scaling every version and every era. I think I legit have a problem when it comes to power scaling. I'm addicted. I've even thought about branching into other universes, but that's gonna be in the future. Anyways, Angron, the Red Butcher. He is easily one of the strongest Primarchs. In fact, I've got him ranked at number 5 overall, which is insane considering who's above him. We're talking Konrad Curze with his psychic foresight and lightning-fast reflexes, the Lion with his unmatched dueling prowess, Magnus as the second most powerful psyker in the galaxy, and Sanguinius with literal flight and also foresight. And then we have Angron, a man with a broken mind controlled by the Butcher's Nails, implants that are constantly frying his brain and forcing him into a state of endless rage. Yet, even with his sanity stripped away, he's still number 5. This dude beat Leman Russ and Roboute Guilliman in single combat, and he literally held up a Titan, an entire god machine, during the Shadow Crusade to save Lorgar Aurelian. And even other Primarchs acknowledged how absurdly strong he was. You've got guys like Russ and Sanguinius talking about how terrifying Angron was. Now that's your benchmark, guys. Now imagine that same Angron, but 10 times more powerful, jacked up by Khorne, and even more stupid. That's what demonhood gave him. Immense strength, full flight capabilities, complete regeneration, immunity to all magic and sorcery, but with the cost of his ability to think. He's become an apex predator of the warp and real space, a living embodiment of endless violence. Now if I'm remembering this correctly, that's the guy the Lion fought in single combat and defeated him. That's a pretty insane feat, guys. But that's not the only Primarch we're talking about. We then have the emo bird boy. And unfortunately though, his most impressive feats both involve beating up the same guy, Lorgar. The first takes place during the Dropsite Massacre, where Corax absolutely brutalizes Lorgar and it's not even close. Corax nearly kills him outright, and the only thing that saves Lorgar from getting his heretical face smashed in permanently is Conrad Gurs jumping in at the last second. Fast forward to after the Horus heresy, when Lorgar is preparing to enter his long seclusion to study the warp and the great game. Now ascended as a demon Primarch, Lorgar should be a whole different beast. But once again, Corax makes him look bad. The fight isn't even close, as Corax dismantles him in combat, even in his demonic form. The only reason we don't get a final outcome is because Lorgar chooses to retreat before Corax can finish the job. Still, that's 2 Lorgar beatdowns for the Ravenlord. And with that, we come to the final showdown, the ultimate debate. Let's start by locking in our number 3 spot, and honestly guys, this one's not even controversial. Roboute Guilliman is clearly the third wheel here, guys. The weakest of the Loyalist Primarchs currently active in the 42nd millennium. He doesn't even defeat a single demon Primarch. Not during the heresy, not during the scouring, and definitely not now, even when armed with one of the most powerful weapons in the Imperium, the Emperor's Sword. This blade is ridiculous, guys. When wielded by the Emperor himself, it was used to purge the webway, the literal whole webway of an uncountable horde of demons with a psychic inferno so terrifying, the warp entities literally fled in terror. Its very presence is anthem to chaos. Now yes, Guilliman isn't a psyker, at least not yet, so we can't channel the full warp burning potential of the blade, but still the sword is so potent that even when used as a blunt object, it should still cleave through demons like wet paper. And yet, Guilliman still can't beat Magnus or Mortarion in one-on-one combat. That's flabbergasting. Guilliman is a general, a master of logistics, an empire builder, but as a warrior, as a duelist, he's pretty low tier. Maybe high low tier, and frankly, I think most of you expected that. Even the sword of the Emperor can't save him from being the thinking man's Primarch, instead of a powerhouse on the battlefield. Now to be fair, Emperor Empowered Guilliman is a completely different animal. That version isn't really Guilliman anymore, it's more like the Emperor inhabiting his son's body. That's the version that burned through Nurgle's garden and even injured Nurgle himself, demonstrating what the sword can truly do when paired with divine psychic powers. But once again, I'm not ranking that version here. It wouldn't be fair. If any of the Primarchs got possessed by Big E, they'd all be monstrous. So yeah, Lord Commander Guilliman in his standard 40k form comes in at number 3. Which brings us to the real debate. Second place versus first place. So we have the Lion, the Duelist, the Son of the Forest, who has returned with new abilities and items like Forest Walk, and the Emperor's Shield, which enhanced his already legendary prowess. While on the other hand, we have Corvus Corax, the Warp Shadow, who has been enhanced by releasing his inner warp powers, becoming what all Primarchs are on the inside, a warp entity. Is the Lion too aged to take down Corvus? Are Corvus's abilities not strong enough to break the ultimate defense that is the Emperor's Shield? Let's debate this. So the first thing I feel like we have to bring up when comparing the Lion to frankly anyone is his age. Let me reiterate what I said earlier. The Lion has gotten older, 10,000 years older to be exact, and even he remarks to himself that a being like Conrad Gurs might best him. A couple things to note here that make me feel differently. One, this is immediately after the Lion awakes, and my guess is that he was still a little bit out of it since he had been asleep for literally 10,000 years. The Lion may have lost a step or two, yet he's still faster than Space Marines can track and fast enough to outmaneuver and slay a demon Primarch. The Lion's base stats, like his speed, strength, and overall power, might be slightly diminished, emphasis on slightly, but his new items and powers, the Emperor's Shield and the Forest Walk ability easily make up for it, and in my opinion, make him stronger than his 30k variation. Now shifting to Corvus Corax, in order to compare him to the Lion, we need to lay out his powers and weigh them against the Lion's Forest Walk ability. Corax's abilities have evolved far beyond anything he displayed during the Great Crusade or the Heresy. He has demonstrated the power to manipulate his very form, transforming into a living shadow, a flock of talon-like birds, a towering winged monster at least twice the size of a Space Marine, and an oily pool of shadows that surges forward to consume entire squads of Space Marines, all of which are impervious to bolter fire. This appears to be Corax's unique form of warp-based reality manipulation, centered around shapeshifting and the weaponization of shadows. The Lion's warp upgrade is Forest Walk, which to summarize allows him to teleport short distances, fade in and out of reality, and move so silently and quickly that even other Space Marines can't track him. On top of this, Forest Walk lets him conjure mist, trees, and natural barriers from the mere Caliban realm, creating terrain advantages, ambush opportunities, and disorientating environments for his enemies mid-fight. It's a powerful tool, and combined with his speed, strength, and refined martial skill, it makes the Lion a terror in combat. But when we directly compare the two, Corax simply has a greater mastery over the warp and a much more aggressive, combat-focused application of his abilities. His are brutal, warping extensions of his will that are perfect for one-on-one combat. He is literally the shadows, and that makes him harder to pin down and significantly more unpredictable. While the Lion's powers enhance his already formidable fighting style, Corax's powers are more devastating, more varied, and seem specifically designed to tear apart even elite enemies in personal combat. In this form, Corvus Corax seems at his strongest, having claw-like spears, and his speed is nearly unmatched. However, with that said, I do want to say that it's clear the Lion hasn't lost a step. If anything, he's still on par with, or just slightly below, his peak 30k version, which I considered to be the third strongest Primarch. This means he still boasts superior speed and strength compared to most of his brothers, including Corvus Corax. Corax, on the other hand, appears to have the edge in terms of warp-based abilities, showcasing a far more versatile and terrifying mastery over shadows and shapeshifting. But when we shift focus to their weaponry, the Lion pulls ahead once again. He wields the Emperor's Shield, an artifact so powerful that even Angron in his Demon Primarch form couldn't break through it. This gives the Lion a massive defensive edge over the emo Bird Boy. But I think the best way to settle this is by comparing the Demon Primarchs they've defeated. Corvus took down Lorgar and the Lion defeated Angron. Obviously, one of these is stronger than the other, but we can't just hand the win to the Lion because he fought the tougher opponent. Yes, the Lion had a harder time with Angron, but Angron is, without question, the strongest Demon Primarch when it comes to raw melee combat. On the other hand, Lorgar wasn't at his peak when Corax faced him. He had only recently ascended to demonhood, hadn't fully adapted to his powers, and hadn't yet mastered Annuncia, an absurdly broken ability that lets one manipulate reality itself. We're talking about something so powerful that it injured Horus Lubrical at the height of his power, harmed Perpetuals, and casually killed Space Marines. So how do we actually weigh this out? I think the most effective way to truly decide this is Corax vs Angron. Could the Bird Boy stand toe-to-toe against raged-out angry Ron? An interesting excerpt I want to bring up that occurs during the Horus Heresy is when the Raven Guard prepare for their final stand after the Dropsite Massacre has occurred. I'm gonna once again try to be Corvus Corax. He would have to face Angron, and he knew he would fall to the World Eater. There was not another Primarch that could best him in single combat, save perhaps Horus and maybe Sanguinius. Corax was an immortal lord of battle, but Angron was war incarnate. God damn, should I be a voice actor? I'm just kidding, I'm terrible. Now, of course, this is Heresy era. Well, before either had ascended to their current forms, so it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison. Still, it gives us an insight into Corax's own assessment of his combat prowess relative to Angron's. With that said, we can't take this statement as absolute truth in the modern setting. The Lion has since defeated Demon Primarch Angron in the present timeline, and Corax himself has embraced his warp-infused powers, making him far more dangerous than he was 10 millennia ago. The situation has changed, but the statement still carries a little bit of weight. It shows that, even before Angron's ascension, Corax didn't believe he could defeat him. Truthfully, I don't believe Corvus Corax could defeat Angron, even with his enhanced powers. There's also Corax's confrontation with Conrad Kurz during the Dropsite Massacre. As I mentioned earlier, Corax did not run when Kurz intervened to save Lorgar, but he did immediately disengage after the Night Haunter appeared. To me, this suggests that while Corax didn't fear Kurz per se, he likely didn't believe he could take him down in a quick duel either, especially not without risk. That might be reading into it a little bit, but there's a reasonable implication here. Corax was confident in his abilities, but not arrogant. He knew who he could take down and who he couldn't in a straight fight, or at least who wasn't worth the risk. On the other hand, the Lion takes on both of these Primarchs, Angron and Kurz, and defeats them. I can already hear some of you grumbling, but this is 40k Fallen Cow. Corvus Corax has gotten so much stronger. And yes, he has, but also, so has Angron. Let's apply some simple logic here. If Corax and Angron have been significantly empowered in the current setting, and Corax once believed he couldn't beat Angron even in the Horus Heresy era, then it's hard to imagine he could outright destroy him now. Corax does overpower Lorgar in both base and Demon Primarch forms, but let's be honest, Lorgar is comfortably the weakest of the Primarchs in either state. In summary, the Lion is still faster and stronger than Corvus Corax, has slain more dangerous opponents, and is better equipped, especially with the Emperor's Shield, which can tank some of the most devastating blows Angron can dish out. Corax, on the other hand, has superior warp abilities, but beyond that, there's not much that gives him an edge in a direct confrontation. To me, this isn't really much of a debate. Lionel Johnson, the son of the forest, the master duelist, the Primarch of the Dark Angels, is currently the strongest Loyalist Primarch in the 42nd millennium. Corvus Corax, the Warp Shadow, and the Primarch of the Raven Guard comes in as a close second. I know a lot of you probably expected the reverse, but when you look at the actual evidence, the Lion remains just as powerful as he was during the Great Crusade, and now with his enhanced warp abilities and upgraded war gear, he might even be able to stand toe-to-toe with Magnus the Red, Demon Primarch of Tzeentch, and in my opinion, the single strongest Demon Primarch in 40k. And that's gonna wrap up our face-off between the Lion and the Bird Boy. Whew. That was a long one, fellas. I know this one's gonna stir the warp a bit, so go ahead and drop your takes in the comments. Leave nothing back, herd. But we're not done yet. In the next video, we're diving headfirst into who is the strongest Space Marine from the Horus Heresy. And trust me, I'm really looking forward to that one. Some of these picks will surprise you, and others might get your bolters firing in the comments section. Even further down the line, I'm planning a variation of that video for the current 40k setting too. That's right, Primaris Marines, Heretics, and everything in between. I'll be sending out a poll soon so you guys can submit which chapters or champions you want to see dissected, ranked, or gloriously mocked. So stay milked, guys, stay loyal, and remember, loyalty is its own reward. I'll see you in the next video.